Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's Gradcracker webinar, and I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by Toyota. As I'm sure you all know, Toyota is one of the world's largest automotive manufacturers. They operate in over 60 countries across the globe and employ over 300,000 people. But what is it really like to work for Toyota in the UK? Today, we're going to be joined by students and graduates on their schemes to tell you just that. Right now, Toyota are open to applications for their graduate and industrial placement schemes, so make sure you head to their Gradcracker Company Hub after this webinar to get those applications in. Before we dive into meeting our students and grads, I'd like to introduce you to Rubica, who looks after the recruitment at Toyota. So hi Rubica, thank you for joining us today.
Hi, thank you.
Could you start by telling our audience a little bit more about your role?
Yeah, sure. So I'm a graduate, so I'm just coming to the end of my graduate scheme, and I joined in September 2020 as a HR graduate within the organisation planning and resourcing scheme. So this is basically to do with kind of company succession planning, and then the resourcing side is kind of the recruitment side, which is where I'm focused in. And so my main role is within the recruitment, looking after the graduate and placement scheme from application stage all the way to the onboarding.
Fantastic. So all the way through the recruitment process, people will be getting to know you. You'll be kind of the point of contact.
Yeah, exactly.
Brilliant. So everyone remember that, remember Rubica's name, and remember that you've seen her here today. So can you tell our audience a little bit more about Toyota in the UK and what you do?
Yeah, sure. So we've got two manufacturing plants within the UK. So we've got our main site at Burniston within Derby, and that's where we're currently manufacturing vehicles, and we're currently producing a Corolla. We also have a business revenue centre where we make kind of modifications and the kind of aftercar to cars as well. And then we've got our D-side plant, which is our engine manufacturing plant. So slightly smaller plant, but we make just as many kind of engines. Then we export those worldwide, just as we export the Corolla worldwide as well. So we've got about 2,500 people working at Burniston and about 500 people working at D-side.
Okay, fantastic. And all the graduates who have joined us today are at the Burniston site, aren't they?
Yeah.
But you do have some roles open right now for D-side as well as Burniston.
Yes, we have both graduate and placement opportunities at both of our sites. And regardless of the site that you'll be in, you'll all be part of one big network and cohort as well coming in, and you'll be doing kind of learning and development courses.
Fantastic. And can you tell us a little bit more about the individual schemes that you're offering this year, Rubica?
Yeah. So at the moment, we've got live quite a few different vacancies. Our first one's kind of our engineering scheme, and that is available for both students, so for placements, and for graduates as well. And we've got opportunities available at both Burniston and D-side. We usually only hire for September intake, but this year we have got some starts in January. So if you have already graduated, then that is possible to start a little bit earlier in January instead of September. But in terms of the engineering scheme itself, it is a specialist position. So you'll be coming into one of our main manufacturing areas. This could be press, could be weld, could be paint, plastics, assembly, quality assurance, or potentially even the business revenue centre as well, or our facilities department. And you'll be based there with it for the 2 years of the scheme, being involved in various projects. And you'll also have learning and development courses, as I mentioned, that you'll be doing alongside your engineering scheme. So we have got a couple of engineering graduates. They can tell you probably a little bit more about the specific kind of projects and things that are involved and the particular kind of specialist positions that we've got available. So for example, we've got kind of systems engineering, we've got mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, or kind of maintenance engineering. So there are different streams of engineering here as well.
Fantastic.
So
thank you so much.
That's right. That's the engineering scheme, but we've also then got kind of production control, human resources, and at the moment we've also got finance and purchasing. So finance and purchasing placement and finance graduate schemes. So production control, Tom's probably tell you a little bit more about. In terms of HR, that's kind of more, it might not be as relevant for some of our students, but if you have done kind of maths background or even business, that's something that you could go into.
Great, thank you so much. And all of those roles right now are open on the Gradcracker Hub for the engineering, production control and finance and purchasing schemes. So what we're going to do now is dive over to meet the rest of our panel. So Tom, we're going to start with you. Please, could you tell us where you went to university, what you studied, and what your job title is now?
Okay, hiya. So I'm Tom. I went to Cardiff University, where I did economics with an industrial placement year, and I graduated last year. And I've now been at Toyota in the sort of PC production control department in the Burniston office.
Thank you very much. And Amal, same to you. Could you tell us where you went to uni, what you studied, and what your job title is now?
Okay. Hi, I'm Amal. I studied chemical engineering with a year in industry at the University of Sheffield, and I'm currently working in paint shop as an engineer.
Fantastic. Over to you, Joe. Can you tell us all about yourself?
Yep. Hi, everyone. So I studied at the University of Cambridge, where I did mechanical and aerospace engineering, and I'm now an engineer in the assembly division at TM UK.
Fantastic. And Josh, finally, can you tell everyone a little bit about your background?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Josh. I'm currently at University of Nottingham studying mechanical engineering, and I'm on placement in the quality assurance division.
Brilliant. And you're going back to university in the next few weeks, aren't you, Josh?
Yes, yeah, returning back to university, yep.
Great. So yeah, so you can give us a good overview of the placement year and your experiences so far. So that's great. I mean, you've all done slightly different things. You've all come from a range of universities. So it's going to be really interesting to get to know you all a bit better as we go through. I think, Jess, you're going to have a bit of a chat with everyone now, aren't you?
Yeah, if that's okay. So you've mentioned your job titles, but I'd like to find out a bit more about what you actually do and what the department's like that you work in, what the team's like and everything like that. So Josh, I'm going to come to you if that's okay first. So tell us a little bit about your placement, what you've experienced so far, and how life has been for the last year or so for you.
Sure. So I'm in the systems and innovation section within QA. We're mainly responsible for maintaining digital systems around the production line, not just within QA, but also within other shops like assembly, for example. But also innovating new technology, so introducing new AI systems, such as for vision, so vehicle inspection, but also digitalizing some paper-based processes to improve the data engineering side, to improve our traceability, security, and just get as much automation as possible out of bits of equipment.
Brilliant. So tell us a bit about your placement. So it's obviously a year-long placement. Or was it 11 months?
Yeah.
Year
Yeah.
Yeah, year-long. And tell us a bit about, kind of go back to the start. So again, there'll be students listening now that are thinking, oh, wow, yeah, I'd love to do a year in industry with Toyota. So tell us a bit about what it was like in terms of starting at Toyota and kind of that, a bit like we could say about like the onboarding kind of experience.
Yeah, sure. I think definitely since my first day here, everyone's been really supportive, and this was the first proper engineering job that I'd had outside of some work experience I did over some summers. This was like my first paid engineering role.
Yeah.
And the support network here was fantastic. You're not expected to know everything, of course, when you start. They give you the tools that are required to learn on the job and learn about all these different systems. Also opportunity to do some training. As an example, we did some training with a contractor for our AI systems, where we learned how to retrain and build our own AI, which was really useful. And going through the placement, you really notice your own professional development. And looking back at myself a year ago, there's a big difference. So yeah, a really good place to work.
Well, some of the regular listeners, will know how much, I am such a huge fan of doing a placement and the benefits. So it's great to see there, it's such a great example that you can already see as an individual how you've developed over the last 12 months. So, going back to university in September, October, whenever you start, you'll be able to hit the ground running, I guess, which is great. So well done. Amal, I'm going to come to you next, if that's okay. Similar question, if you could tell us a bit more about your role and your team and what you've been up to.
So I'm a paint engineer. My team are responsible for all of the processes within paint. My specific process is ED, which stands for electrodeposition, and it's a process that's required for anti-corrosion. So even though I'm a paint engineer, I don't actually do the stuff to do with paint. I am the prep before paint.
Okay.
And I basically tell people I make sure that cars don't corrode.
Yeah.
But my main responsibilities are like technical escalations for any of the processes. So if anything's going wrong, I'm the person to go to, and just managing, making sure all the equipment is up to standard working, and then smaller projects to basically improve our efficiency and see if there's a better way of doing it. I know Toyota are quite focused on continuous improvement, so they always mention Kaizen, and it is truly embodied throughout Toyota. Everything's always about improving. Is there a better way? Is there a more efficient way, cheaper, better quality? So just managing projects with that.
Amal, can you just explain what Kaizen means? Because I think a lot of our audience won't know what that is.
I don't either. So,
so Kaizen stands for continuous improvement. So we always use Kaizen. So this might be a Kaizen project. So it's just about improving it, and that can be in a number of ways. It could be safety, quality, cost, just any time. So it's just continuous improvement. We're always looking for a better way. Even after like we've completed a project, we reflect on that and say, is there a better way we could have approached it? And then just use those learnings and share across departments.
Fantastic. I think that's a great thing to just have in your life generally, but also is really great to hear how you do that at Toyota. I just wanted to jump in here quickly, Jess, and just when you joined Toyota, when you applied to the engineering scheme, did you know that you were going to end up in paint, or how did that assignment start? Was it you applied to one scheme and then during the interview process, or just explain how that worked?
So when I applied, it was just a kind of general graduate engineer.
Yeah.
And then I think Rebecca will probably be able to answer this better than myself, but after the assessment center, I think they kind of match you to what's best suited. So because I come from a chemical engineering background, I think they thought that paint is like the best place. But I think regardless of where they place you, everyone's so helpful and very friendly to help you out. So even if it is something that you're not familiar with, you're more than supported to excel in your role.
Great, that's a very good point there. I've got so many questions there, Rubika, and just you on that point. How does that system work for you? So, if you do get a candidate and you think, that they would be perfect for that role, and it might not be necessarily a role that they were particularly interested in originally, a bit like Amal said, you might not, as a candidate, you might not know much about that area. What kind of support do you give to them at that point to explain to the student or the candidate, these are the different options and this is where we think you'd fit best?
So at Assessment Centre, we often ask candidates if there's any particular department that they're interested in. Following this, we kind of look at their experience. And again, as I mentioned, like what background they've got. So for example, chemical engineering is better suited towards kind of paint or plastics. And then at the final interview, we assign a department and they'll be interviewing for that department at the final interview stage. So at that point, you have the opportunity to ask the hiring managers there to have a kind of further discussion in terms of what the role entails, what it's like to work within the department. You get to kind of speak to those senior management people there.
Fantastic. That's good. That's a great way as well. Any students that are listening, think about doing your research then before you apply. Have a look at the different areas, start to think, okay, where could I imagine myself working in, and make sure you do your research on all of them. And now I'm just going to come back to you, bit of a again left field question, but what would you say within paint, because obviously like you say, your kind of main issues to stop erosion. What is the kind of the biggest problem for you? How do you kind of overcome that? And how would you keep your technology kind of to the forefront to stop that problem?
So a lot of the things that have been implemented, a lot of the installations have been from when the plant was kind of founded 30 odd years ago. So it is just seeing what's out there and just speaking to people. So we do have contractors and suppliers that come in and tell us like, we have these new filtration systems, and trialing them. But at the same time, we need to ensure that there's no impact to the production line. So you have that kind of responsibility of don't ruin anything, but also try and improve. So you have that constraint of the production line is running whilst you're doing these trials. So I think the biggest learning curve for me was doing a trial on a live production line and just making sure cars are not, because at the end of the day we're here to make cars, so we can't impact that in any way. So it's just keeping track of that and just coordinating trials amongst so many different teams, because so many people are involved in that process. So even if you think it's something small, you might have to contact QA, let them know, or the process before you or after you, like, this is what's happening, and just making sure that communication is very clear across the different areas.
Yeah, it's almost like a full production, I guess, isn't it? You know, if you want to change something in a cog that's moving so perfectly, you don't want to mess it up, because you've seen it, you know, at other plants, but you know how it, you know, everything is on the move. It is almost that just in time kind of, you know, process, isn't it? So yeah, you don't want to be you know, doing the wrong thing at the wrong time. So very interesting.
Just to point on that, Jess, we've got a really interesting sort of factory to forecourt tab on the Gradcracker company hub for Toyota, which kind of shows you all the different areas and a lot of things that Amal's just touched upon. You know, there's so many different things happening, and it gives you quite a good overview of that if everyone wants to have a look at that after the webinar, just to kind of, and also going back to what Rubika was saying about learning about the different departments and where they might sit, gives you a really good overview of how everything works.
Oh, good spot. Yeah, that's a Thanks, Soph. So Jo, come to you. Similar question. Tell us a bit about life for you at Toyota. Jo?
I think there's a bit of a delay. Jo?
Yes, sorry, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
I can hear you now, yeah.
Sorry, yeah, there's a bit of a lag on my computer. So I work within assembly as an engineer. I've been here for 2 years. So I'm just coming to the end of my graduate scheme. And going back to Rubika's point, I was quite lucky that in my final interview I was asked where I'd like to work. So I said either assembly or weld, and it turns out I was being interviewed by the assembly general manager.
Yeah,
so that was good. So that's where I've ended up. So I'm with maintenance engineering. So we look specifically at the machines and equipment. So it's ensuring that they're operating at more than 99% of the time. And it's constantly looking to improve reliability and quality of those machines. So it's extracting data. We then analyze that data to forecast when things are going to need to be refurbished or replaced, and to proactively predict breakdowns, or if there has been a breakdown, to retrospectively work out what's gone on and get to the root cause of the problem.
So it's funny, sometimes you just think of the manufacturing of the car, don't you? But you don't think about the aftercare and, you know, making sure then those mistakes or errors, whatever, don't happen again. So yes, I bet that's a super interesting kind of element of the business. So in terms of your 2 years, and have you spent the full 2 years doing that, or have you managed to experience other areas within the business as well?
I have. So I've been with assembly maintenance for 2 years now. I've done an internal secondment to our quality assurance division, where I went around and learned everything about that. And then I'm now just starting to look towards rotation within the business. So whether that be sort of outside of the assembly division, or there are other teams within assembly that I could go to. So for example, there's mass engineering, which is involved with more of the process related aspects. And the tools that are used to build the car. There's pilot, which is new models. So in January of next year, we have the 2023 model coming in, which is just a refresh of the Corolla. And then there's systems and logistics as well on top of that. So there's different areas within assembly that you can work in. But yeah, I'm just starting to look towards rotation within the business now.
That's really exciting. So when you're at the point of, you know, making those decisions, Jo, we're going to talk a bit about training a bit later on, but this question is really more about the support that you get, you know, in terms of, because like you said, there's so many options where you could go next. What support do you get in terms of learning what, you know, would be the best route for you, or is it really up to you as an individual to make that decision?
So I have regular one-to-ones with my line manager or my section manager. So we discuss performance, projects that I'm working on, stress-related items, whether I'm comfortable, how I'm getting on with work, and then also start to talk about the future. So we've just recently started to talk about rotations. So I've put together a few ideas of where I think I'll be best suited. The managers have their own ideas in their head as well, and it's matching those two up. Yeah. But there's regular contacts with the higher ups to set those plans in action.
Brilliant. That's good. It's great that you get that support as well. So thanks, Joe. Tom, I'm going to come to you last but not least. Same question, a bit about your role.
Okay. Yeah, so unlike the others, I am a specialist. I'm not an engineer. So I'm a specialist in PC. And my role is really split between two main responsibilities. I've got the vehicle planning side of my role and then the plant management side. Okay. So vehicle planning is more about the long-term big picture planning. So we're looking at things like how many cars are we building over the next sort of 1 to 3 years. We're building sort of monthly production plans. So we know which cars are building, what specs they are. And that primarily involves like negotiating with the various shops or negotiating with Toyota Europe to try and sort of agree those figures. And then plant management is very different. It's more sort of in the moment reactionary work.
Right.
So it's we're sort of responding to managing and trying to mitigate any sort of major breakdowns that happen across the plant. So any impact to weld, for example, might impact paint shop in the future. So we're trying to sort of talk to all the shops, see how big the problem is, how quickly it can be resolved, and just act as like an information hub for everybody to try and fix it quickly.
Wow. So your role is quite, you've got that instant stuff, panic, and then there's that kind of forecasting what could happen in 12 months, what could happen in 6 months. So it's
exactly.
Worry, stress, the last 2 years.
But it's quite nice. It gives me a variety of work to do. There's some nice strategic planning that takes place. And then there's the day-to-day sort of putting out fires as they arise. Yeah,
absolutely. So I can imagine it's quite exciting in that sense as well. Tom, when you're looking at the kind of automotive industry, and there's so much change going on within the industry. The pressure of doing hybrid, and electric cars and all this. So that kind of element of your brain and the business, is this change, is it exciting time for you? Can you, start to predict what's going to happen when, and is it all falling into place? And how are you helping kind of drive that forward?
Yeah, so it's definitely an interesting time. Particularly when we're looking sort of 1 to 3 years ahead. At the moment, we've got things like we're phasing out our only non-hybrid model currently. So we're going to be fully hybrid moving forward.
Brilliant.
But there's definitely interesting discussions trying to talk to Toyota Europe and sales division. And trying to say, okay, where do we want to be in 3 years' time? Are we going to be building the same model? Are we going to switch models? There's a lot of discussion that goes on.
Yeah.
But I think for my role in particular, it's mostly sort of trying to optimize how we build and what we build, trying to sort of optimize profitability, for example.
Right. Okay.
Sorry, Jess, can I just ask you a question that's kind of outside of what we've been talking about? But at Burniston, for example, how many Corollas would you produce in a month? If you had to give like on a normal month, like what are we looking at?
I think off the top of my head, we're building about 220 cars a shift, so maybe 450 a day.
Wow.
I can't do the maths in my head to work that out, but it's
no, I can't either.
10,000 cars a month.
A lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Roughly 10,000 a month, I would guess.
Yeah. Okay, so we're talking really huge volumes. So your role then in production control is kind of even more vital, because if something breaks down, that's a huge setback, isn't it? Just on one day.
Yeah, exactly.
Fantastic. Okay, sorry, Jess.
No, it's all right. Don't you worry. I'm going to do my rounds again. Josh, I'm going to come back to you. One question I like to ask is the kind of, what experience have you had so far with Toyota that has really stood out to you? So in the last year, what would say be your favourite project that you've been involved in?
So one quite interesting project I worked on, it was a digitalization project that we did for one of our inspection processes in QA. And it was a really good opportunity to get quite stuck in programming and like user interface development and that kind of thing, which I hadn't really done before. it's been a project that has a lot of potential now to share, not only within the division, but plant-wide. And it's the first time within QA that we've used this system to digitalize a process. And it's had a lot of benefits in terms of the data that we get out of it, and also the reporting. And it's been really rewarding as well, not only because of the skills that I've developed from it, but also to see how happy the guys are on the line with the system. So yeah, they really like it, and it's been a really good and rewarding project.
Yeah, you must be super proud of yourself. That is really good. So in terms of, again, learning a new skill like programming, again, personally, fantastic, absolute tick, wherever you go in your career next. But is it something which, again, you think you would use in the future? Has it maybe opened up a thought, thinking, no, actually, I'm quite interested in programming. I could see my career going down that route? Or
Yeah, I think so. And I think that's one of the beauties of being at Toyota, is you're exposed to so much and such a wide variety of activities and projects. It really helps you to understand and learn a bit more about yourself and what you enjoy, what you don't enjoy so much. And
or you thought you were going to enjoy, but you don't.
Exactly. And it opens up maybe some doors that weren't open before you started here, and it's certainly given me a better idea as to what I'll be looking for when I come to seeking a grad job.
Absolutely brilliant, good stuff. Thanks, Josh. I'll come to you. Same question. Favorite project that you've worked on so far?
So mine's a little bit different to Josh's, but just before I talk about my project, I just wanted to say, when you're on the graduate scheme, part of it is that you do line training, so you actually go on the production line. So just Josh's project is about because it's actually about improving that, it's really beneficial. So because I've been on the line, I know how great of a project that must be, because they really, really appreciate any kind of improvement, because usually it's the same kind of repetitive job. So
yeah. So sorry, Josh, sorry if I underestimated that, because I can imagine that's a really good point. If doing something repetitively, and if someone comes along and say, oh, actually you can do it completely different, and you're going to get the same result or even better. Well done.
Sorry, so we digress. But my favorite project that I've worked on so far has been a project focused on working towards carbon neutrality. So it was a huge energy reduction, and it was quite when we think about it, just if I said what the project was specifically, it seems quite simple, but it led to have huge energy reduction, so 1.2 million kilowatt hours per year. And then, because considering how expensive energy is right now, it led to a cost saving of 76,000 per year. So having ownership of that project and saying I did that was really proud for me, especially coming out of university and putting my name to a project like that. So that's probably the best project that I've worked on.
And if you think really, it's very similar experiences when you say that, in terms of Josh, you've managed to be in control of something, you've changed it, you've seen a problem, and then you've almost fixed it, you and your team, and you've said, oh, there you are. And how brilliant is that? Again, it's such an early stage in your career, you've got that responsibility to do that. And, you're given tasks to sort, so it must be super rewarding. And go back to your point, Josh, as well, to make that change. In saying a cog that's turning so well already. So well done. Joe, I'm going to come to you next. Favorite project you've worked on so far?
I'm afraid I might sound a little similar to Josh, but one of the things with placement students and graduates coming into the business is technology is constantly changing, and one thing that Toyota definitely recognises is that because of that, graduates and IPs bring in new ideas and new technologies that they can implement to the production line. And we're slowly moving into the fourth industrial revolution. So it's all data connectivity, data analysis, connected assets. And I've always been quite a techie person, so I think that's why I got placed where I am currently. But Toyota put me on a programming course for machine PLCs, which are the brains of the machines. And we then use that to extract data from those machines, store it in a database, transfer that data into visualization tools, Power BI, Python, etc. so you can then work with that to implement any Kaizens that you have, and again to forecast that a problem may happen before it even does occur.
It's incredible, really. You think about it, they're almost not really cars anymore, are they? They're almost like moving computers. Seriously,
well, I think the Corolla itself, I think, has 50 different ECUs in it, which are sort of little computers that have a specific role for controlling the engine or controlling the locking system, etc. So yeah, they really are moving computers now.
Yeah, they are. You know, you think when you take them to the garage now, you get them plugged in, and it's like diagnostics. It's not, well, again, like what it used to be, where it's, it's completely different experience now, isn't it? So in terms of, I always try to ask, and I suppose this is what I was trying to angle with you, Tom, in my question earlier. What's the future of the industry looking like? Because, you've all made the point that, you are the young talent coming into the business. You've got all these great new ideas, and, you're going to be at the forefront of this technology. So, what is the kind of industry looking like for you, Joe, and where can you see it going, and what are you most excited about?
I think it's very exciting. So Toyota's released its 2030 vision for electrification. So they've released their vision of all their current models, but in an electric format. So that will be coming. Toyota's also well ahead with things like hydrogen. So we never know, that might be coming to us. So there will inevitably be some kind of model change within a matter of years. So that will be an exciting time. But because of that, they're rapidly trying to bring people into the business and upskill so that we have the workforce ready to make that major change, which is a once in a lifetime change. If you think that we've been producing combustion vehicles since 1991 for over 30 years, the factory will have to undergo massive change. So yeah, there are big things coming.
It's a really exciting time to join then with this change.
And you think it's almost like all elements of the industry has to change, because it's from the design to manufacturing, and then to the end of the life of the car, and then what happens with it after that, because it's a completely new product now, isn't it? So yeah, it is just and there's so many industries now that are at this forefront of change. So the grads and students that are listening now, it's such an exciting time to think I can be at the forefront of all this. So thanks, Joe. Tom, come to you. Favorite project that you've worked on so far?
So mine's weird because it didn't start as a project initially. It was more a case of I got handed a report to have a look at and try and learn how to do it.
Right.
And within a couple of weeks, I was sort of questioning why we were doing things the way we did it.
Good.
And obviously, Toyota likes their Kaizen. They like to see improvements.
Yeah.
So this was sort of looking at how we determine where we allocate cars. So it's looking at profitability of countries and where we sell them. But I effectively was allowed to propose my own new methods for sort of how we determined where we sold cars, based on sort of more accurate profitability analysis. And I was really allowed to sort of dig deep into the data analysis side of it. But it's been really good because it's put me in communication with sort of different teams across Toyota. I've worked with the accounts and finance team. I've worked with obviously the rest of production control. But then I've also had the opportunity to work with sort of the European sales planning teams or the product division team in Toyota Europe. So it's been really interesting because it given me a lot of exposure to a side of a business I didn't necessarily expect to get as a new starter. And being able to sort of have a say in sort of a fairly impactful decision like where we sell cars. It's been an interesting journey to be on, and it's still ongoing now.
Brilliant. So in terms of that, you say it's ongoing still, which is fantastic, but have you kind of suggested your changes now? Are people listening to what you've got to say off the back of it? Is change going to happen?
Yeah, I think so. So I've gone from presenting this to sort of my manager to sort of directors at Toyota UK. And I'm now sort of working with a couple of people in Toyota Europe to try and implement it into how they do their logic for deciding where cars get sold. So hopefully we can do it in a more European scale.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Not just the project itself, but just the exposure to the number of different people you've had in the business, and presenting in front of managers and directors is just a fantastic skill to have. And I think quite often we think about the technical skills, especially, you know, given that, you know, we focus on STEM and the roles that we have on Gradcracker. But the soft skills that you gain through a scheme such as the one that Toyota offer across production control and engineering it's not just all about the technical skills, is it? You know, the things that you've just been talking about is this presenting, it's understanding data, it's being able to translate that into something that somebody else would understand. And I think those soft skills, we can often be underestimated how valuable they are to gain through a graduate program as well.
Absolutely. So yeah, it's just interesting, still a running theme with all of you in terms of being at the you know, being able to make a change, and you know, you've got the responsibility to make a change. It's great, isn't it? So next I want to talk a bit about training, and I know you've kind of touched upon this, you know, all of you, but a bit about, you know, what your training has been like, because sometimes, you know, when you're looking at these opportunities on Gradcracker, you think, oh gosh, you know, I'm going to need some help, going to need some support, I don't know everything just yet. So what support and what training do you get whilst at Toyota? So Josh, I'm going to come back to you first. But I'm going to add another question in there. You know, you said that when we did our kind of pre-prep call, you know, you said you used Gradcracker when you were job hunting. And, you know, you've looked at the job description, looked at the company hub on Gradcracker. Did you feel a bit overwhelmed when you look at a job description thinking, you know, I want that training, I want that support? You know, was you a bit anxious when you were applying for your placement role?
Not so much when applying, but certainly when I started, it's quite overwhelming walking around and seeing all of the different systems and processes going on. I think I described it to my supervisor when I started as like an organized chaos, like walking around the factory. But yeah, I mean, as well as the support that your team give you and your division give you, as part of the industrial placement program, you have to do a few work-based assignments that really help with your training. The first of which is a personal planning course where you learn how to plan effectively and use Outlook and Teams to plan. Second one is Plan, Do, Check, Act, which is like a framework that we follow here at Toyota for a lot of our project work. And you're encouraged in your work-based assignment to apply those principles to a project you're currently working on. And then a safety assignment as well, where you build up a portfolio of health and safety activity that you've done through the year. And finally, your final presentation, which is like an opportunity to showcase everything you've done to your team. And all of those assignments are followed by a report to your manager and supervisor. So a lot of training formally and informally on the job.
That's really good to know. How did you find doing the presentation? Was you nervous?
Yeah, the first one is always nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
But similar to Tom, I've had a lot of opportunity to present to the general manager and directors at Team UK as well. So a lot of exposure to presentations, and as you've mentioned, the soft skills that you develop from that are immense.
Yeah.
Again, it's that a skill which no one can take away from you either, is presenting, and it's a great skill to have. So again, another great thing on your CV. So well done, Josh. Amala, similar question in terms of the training kind of experiences you've had so far.
So yeah, similar to Josh, we've had like work-based assignments. On the graduate scheme, we also have line training, which is 6 weeks of experience on the production line. So I think usually happens, so you start in September and it usually happens start of the year, so around Feb and then March as well. So 6 weeks on the line, and you go into a department and you work physically on the production line, and it's a really eye-opening experience. Like yeah, it's really, really beneficial. I think when I was applying for the on Gradcracker for this graduate scheme, I think that it has like a small description, and it is exactly that. So you get real responsibility from day one in your normal role, and then that line training experience gives you just an insight into like what you're trying to improve. You're trying to improve these processes that members are actually working on. So when you're working, you're thinking, okay, how can I do from a high level? What can I do in my day to day to improve this and make it easier, save time, and just improve it. So other than the work-based assignments that Josh has already mentioned, we've had a presentation skills one as well. So that's just about how to present, and we have so many opportunities to present that I think now, like, the nerves are just kind of, you're just used to it and it's just normal to present. So it is a really good experience.
Yeah.
Well,
none of you seem nervous today, so you must have lots of experience.
Joe, same question, training experiences so far.
So I think Josh and Amal have already touched on a lot of the learning and development courses that you go on. And those are great because Toyota has a very unique culture that is different to a lot of businesses that you'll work for, in terms of the language that's used, the methodology that's used. So these courses help you to learn that. So there's also Toyota business practices and situational self-leadership. So they all help you to build up as a person. There's also lots of on-the-job development as well. So just being around the language and the methodology all day, every day, you pick it up. But I would definitely say it's a great tip for those that are applying to do a bit of research into the Toyota culture so that you understand what it's like before going into interview, because it is so different to any other company.
We cover that a lot within the company hub, don't we, Sophie? The culture of business and everything else. So again, students listening, don't just run off and hit apply on these roles. Do your research first, think about all the areas that we've discussed and think, where could I fit in, is Toyota the right organisation for me? So brilliant. Thanks, Joe. Tom, similar question. Anything, training experiences, anything else that you've learned that you think, ooh, useful that?
So I think the other guys have touched on most of the big ones, but sort of as a more sort of informal sort of form of training, Joe mentioned before about internal secondments. So personally, I had a sit down with my manager and said, I'm really interested in learning about this part of the business, sort of outside of my day-to-day role. So I actually went to Josh's team for 2 weeks, and basically just had the opportunity to understand what their roles are, how they operate, and sort of what their key areas and responsibilities are. So while it's not sort of formal training, it gives you a lot more experience and wider knowledge of how the business operates. And I've definitely been able to take some of that back into my role and sort of say, when I'm talking to these people, I know this is the information they have, or this is the way they like to work. So it really helps with that sort of interaction between between different departments.
Yeah, that's great. We talk a lot about when graduates are on these programs about asking questions and putting yourself in situations, and all of you by the sounds of it have done that. And Tom, you've given so many examples in your experiences so far, asking why, be involved in this, asking for that responsibility. So students listening, listen to everything that everyone said, but Tom, you've nailed some really good points there, so which is really, really good. Ask why. Don't just settle for, okay, whatever. Yeah, okay, if that's what you say. I say, why is that the case? And can we change that and can we move forward? So absolutely brilliant. Next, I want to talk about the next steps. So what is the future looking like for you? So Josh, again, I'm going to come back to you first. I know you've got going back to university ahead of you now, but what is your future looking like for you? Can you imagine your career now at Toyota, or because of the experience, are you thinking something completely different coming out of the automotive sector?
To be honest, I'm not too sure where my head's at, but I could definitely see myself back at Toyota.
Brilliant.
And I've been lucky enough to have an offer for final interview.
Brilliant, well done.
So fast track through the applicant process, which is really positive. It's definitely opened up. My experience here has definitely opened up some other avenues that perhaps I'd like to explore. And really one of my goals of this year was to understand a bit more about what I'd like out of my own career, and it's definitely helped me to achieve that.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, not to take away from Toyota, but again, this is why doing a placement is so beneficial, isn't it, Josh? You've just said there, it gives you that time to think, what do I want, as well as gaining that, that knowledge and that technical knowledge as well of being in industry. So absolutely fantastic. Amal, similar question. If you had a crystal ball, what would your next 5 years look like? Can you
so I think, well, I don't know about next 5 years, but I think near future, my graduate scheme finishes. So the graduate scheme is 2 years, and I've just finished my 1 year, and it's gone really quickly. So when you do apply and like to the students and graduates, like it goes super fast, and just enjoying it, just getting that experience. So I think after the graduate scheme finishes, they just roll you off into your role. So you don't have to apply. You don't apply for a specific role. You just kind of stay on. So which is really kind of daunting, because you think, oh, am I, like, you start to question yourself, like, am I like an imposter or something? Like, but it is really good. So I'd rotate onto another process within paint, and then just develop that knowledge across the paint shop. But I think there is opportunity to move if you wanted to. You just kind of have to express that to your manager and move on. But so far, I think right now I'm enjoying where I am and just enjoying that responsibility. So hopefully just stay in my area.
So is it official with you guys after the 2 year? Do you shake the word graduate out of your job title then after that? Are you still, serious after that?
But I mean, I feel like that graduate doesn't kind of hinder you in any way, because you have so much responsibility from day one, which is very surprising. I think that was like the biggest shock for me, how much responsibility you have as a graduate. Because you automatically assume that it wouldn't be that way.
And again, all of you have touched upon that. Josh, you've been there for a year, and as again, students might think of it. Do you get that responsibility as a year in industry student? Are they going to put you at the forefront of stuff? But all of you have said the same thing, that you get that responsibility, which is great. Joe, coming to you, handing the crystal ball to you. What's it looking like?
Yes. So as I mentioned at the beginning, so I'm just coming up to the end of my graduate scheme. So at the start of October, I'll transition to become an engineer. So I'll still be within assembly maintenance, working on the same projects. We've had a bit of rotation within the team recently, just in terms of job roles. I think the next step is rotating into perhaps a different team within assembly, focusing on digitalization and innovation. And then eventually there's the potential for an external secondment. So with Toyota being a global company with more than 300,000 employees, there's the possibility to do like a 6 month, 1 year, 2 year, 3 year secondment to somewhere in Europe. So we have factories in France, Czech, headquarters in Brussels, or even over to Japan if you fancy it. So
I'm glad you've mentioned that, Joe, because Tom, you mentioned about secondment, wasn't it? And that question ran through my mind. So yeah, that's a really, really good point. So there is that chance to do that, is there? And what, can you select a time period that you'd be out there for? Could you say a year, 6 months, or could you do shorter than that?
So the opportunities come up and they're advertised, and then you can put yourself forward for it, or you can speak to your managers and suggest that you're open to secondments, and they'll come to you when an opportunity arises. So yeah, you just have to keep an eye open for them, and there's lots of opportunity to travel.
Fantastic. And is there support in terms of wanting to travel, relocate? Do you get that?
Yes, yeah. So the benefits for doing an external secondment are great. I don't know whether Rubica can give some more details on this, but I believe it's accommodation paid for whilst you're out there, a company car. I don't know if you can add to that, Rubica.
Yeah, so it does depend on where you're going, but it's fully supported. So in terms of getting you there, if you need visits back to the UK, as Joe mentioned, like if you do need a company car or kind of help with housing, it is fully supported. Brilliant. And yeah, as Joe mentioned, it's really encouraged nowadays as well. So especially for graduates, I think going forwards, it's going to be something that's really encouraged more and more. It's something our directors are really looking into in terms of kind of us becoming a mobility company.
Oh, so that's a bit of a hint and tip there, I'd say, Rubica, because I think if anyone wants to applying, maybe, you know, stress that in their application or when they're speaking to an interview, they've got the interest to, you know, to gain that kind of experience of traveling, you know, across the different factories and locations. So a bit of a hint and tip there, I think. Tom, same kind of question, but you can answer that quickly as well. But I also kind of want to cover if there was anyone, if people listening now, what kind of advice would you give them on applying? And what would be your pearl of wisdom for the students that are listening about applying to Toyota?
Okay.
I told you I'd give you
Applying for
curveball.
Toyota. Yeah, that's a curveball. I would say just try and highlight any sort of unique skills that you've got. We just had a girl start in our team who's sort of fluent in Turkish, so she's going to be a really useful asset for like the I think she's in parts management team, so she's sort of talking to the factory in Turkey all the time. But it could be anything, any experience you've got, or sort of things you've done through university. Just anything a bit unique to you that you can apply to the business sense, especially in like a global business.
Absolutely. And that's the thing, sometimes it doesn't necessarily have to be relevant to the degree you're studying or the employer that you're applying to, but if it's something a little bit extra that's going to make your application stand out, mention it.
Yeah, I think that leads,
especially as we go into
go on.
Sorry, especially as we go into the future. I mean, things like sort of programming skills, if you know Python, if you can do data analytics, anything like that's going to be appreciated in the future, definitely.
I get another little hint and tip there. So if there's any students thinking, you know, what I'm going to do, you know, on an evening, a bit of Python and these extra skills though, isn't it? It looks great in your CV. Why not?
I
don't know why I need to do this.
I don't know why you do either. Anyway. That kind of leads us into, I was going to come back to Rubica to talk to you a little bit about the recruitment process. So kind of Jess has led into that nicely with Tom's kind of initial hints and tips, but can you give us a quick overview, Rubica, of the recruitment process and how that works?
Yeah, so in terms of recruitment, so you can find our applications on the Gradcracker website or our website, and you can apply through that. So the initial stage is to create an online application where you kind of upload your CV. There's some basic questions and some vacancy questions in terms of kind of why you want to apply for the position. It shouldn't take too long to complete, but we do recommend that you spend some time kind of thinking about your responses.
Absolutely.
And we're looking for kind of in terms of tips, like just making sure you understand the company, the role that you're applying for. So you've got various roles. One of the roles I didn't actually mention was a data science role, which is a new role for this year. So if anyone who's quite interested in kind of digitalization or technology, that's something that might be worth looking into. And we've also got engineering opportunities with digitalization as well. So once you've complete the online application, then if successful, we progress to online testing. So these are just kind of short cognitive tests as well as the kind of behavioral test. And then you'll have, if you're successful at online testing, you'll be invited in for an assessment centre, which will be on site at Burniston. Just give you a feel for our company, feel for kind of who we are, but also allows us to kind of understand the candidates as well. So we think it's really important that we do it on site as opposed to virtual. And then if you're successful at the assessment centre stage, you're then invited in for a final interview around Christmas, maybe early January, to attend a final interview with the hiring managers. So that'll be within the department. So you have an opportunity to meet senior management there.
That's great. That gives everyone a really clear kind of timeline to work towards. So get your applications in now, and then potentially by Christmas, January time, you could be meeting the hiring managers, getting offers. So that's great. Thank you so much for giving us that overview.
In terms of kind of applications, we have set the deadline at the end of October, but sometimes they do close earlier. So we would advise that you kind of get them in as quick as possible. So just to mention that. And the only other position that we haven't spoken about much is the finance graduate scheme. But if anyone is interested in that, I'm sure we can get some further information.
Yeah, fantastic. I think that's a really good point, and it's something we always say, isn't it, Jess, when we're doing our presentations, you know, companies like Toyota get lots and lots of applications, so you may well close before the closing date. Everyone here today, I expect you to go straight to the Toyota Company Hub and get your applications in straight away, because of, you know, what Rubica just said, and also just listening to the amazing stories that we've heard so far. So Thank you for that, Rubika. Can you give us a little bit of advice? So if you were a student applying to your replacement scheme or a graduate scheme with yourselves, what advice would you give them for that? Just that initial application to make themselves stand out.
So in terms of the initial application, I'd say don't rush it. Yes, you want to get it in, but don't try and do it just within the day and get it done. If you don't have the time to do it, I'd definitely say we see big differences, and you can really tell when someone spent 5 minutes as opposed to, a couple hours doing their research. So we definitely see a difference there, especially with the kind of vacancy questions. You want to show that you really do understand the company. So I'd say research goes a long way. And just the kind of understanding of the role. And also, if you can get experience, that's really critical as well. So I know it's been really difficult with COVID, trying to get some experience these days. But if you can, that's always really valued, especially on the CV.
Fantastic.
And we do go through,
ask there, would you, when you say experience, are you thinking industry experience in the automotive sector?
Yeah, ideally, or some sort of relevant experience. So, for example, if it's finance, it doesn't have to be within the automotive sector. And it doesn't necessarily have to, it could be some virtual experience that you've done, or a course or something to show that, you are really invested in where you want to go, and some sort of idea of a long-term career. Sometimes people don't have that, and that's okay. And it's okay to say that, you're using this, especially for placements. Often that placement is an opportunity to try and, get that experience, or try and understand where they want to go in the future. And so it's absolutely fine to say that. But just if you are a graduate, some sort of idea of kind of what it is that you want from your career, or why you're applying to Toyota. And same for a placement, just kind of understand the role that it is that you're applying for.
Absolutely.
Brilliant. Thank you, Rubika. And I think, watching this webinar and everything you've learned today has given you so much ammunition already to put in an amazing application. And like I said, there's so much more information on the Gradcracker Company Hub that you can use to bolster that. Our employers do love to hear that you've attended these webinars. So do make sure that you kind of mention that in your applications. Thank you so much for that, Rubika. What I want to do now is just quickly kind of whiz around our panel again, just to see if you've got any kind of tips. I know, obviously, Tom, we've kind of spoken to you briefly on what you would advise. But Amal, if you could talk to yourself a couple of years ago and you were in the process of applying, what advice would you give yourself?
I'd say just generally try a lot of things, because even if you don't enjoy it, then you've just learned a little bit more about yourself, that you don't enjoy that particular thing. So even a bad experience you just kind of reframe it to think it is a good experience, because you've understood more about what you want to do and what your future might look like and might not involve. So just try different things, and as many things as possible, really.
Yeah, great. Yeah, it's a good one. And Jo, before starting at Toyota, is there anything that you wish that you had known before joining the graduate scheme?
I think, to us, it's quite a tough one to answer. I think the main one is just all the lingo, or the Toyota lingo. So it is a lot when you first come in, although they do literally give you a list and then sort of what each one means. But I wish I'd done a bit more research into that beforehand, and the different terms that Toyota use on a day-to-day basis. So Kaizen, there's Genshiken Butsu, which is go, look, see. So, you go right to the heart of the process, and all the lingo like that.
Brilliant. And Josh, if you could talk to the placement students directly, what would you say to them if they're thinking about applying to one of the Toyota's placement opportunities?
Go for it. It's a really good opportunity. And just a hint for the interview and assessment centre, it's really important to demonstrate your own self-alignment with the Toyota values. So whether that's Kaizen, are you someone that always looks to continuously improve something, and give some examples of how you've done that from your own life experience. It doesn't need to be work related, it could be absolutely anything. It will really benefit you in the interview.
Yeah. Brilliant. That's a really good one. I think, the continuous improvement has been something that's been touched upon by all of you. And is obviously something that's really, really kind of inherent to the whole Toyota culture. So that's a really good one, Josh. Thank you. It's been so lovely hearing from you all today about your different experiences. I think one of the things that's really stood out for me is just how different your roles are. Although you're all working in the same place, you're all doing very, very different things. You've all had such a wide range of different experiences across the business, and the opportunity to work with so many different people as well. I think even as myself, I've worked with Toyota for a good few years now, and have had many chats with Rubica over the years. But I think just hearing it straight from you, from your experiences on the graduate and placement scheme, has really kind of opened my eyes to the type of things that students can do. And I think some of the advice we've had today has been absolutely invaluable for our student audience. So thank you so much. The recording of this webinar will be available for all of our students to watch tomorrow on the Toyota Company Hub and on in the Gradcracker Career Centre. And we'll also break this down to kind of bite-sized chunks, highlights for our audience to re-watch and share as well. Remember, I did touch upon this, but our employers do love it when you tell them that you've watched their webinar, as I know that means that you've already got a good understanding of their company, and it shows you have a real interest in working for them. So make sure you head over to the Toyota Company Hub right now, get your applications in, and let them know that you're at this webinar. Next week, I'm going to be joined by Carla, and we will be talking to Roche, a leading global healthcare company, and you can register your interest to attend that webinar in the Gradcracker Career Centre. So once again, thank you so much from everybody from Toyota, and we'll see you all next week.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.